is Steve Whitten. I'm the Director of Instruction at Rosedale Golf and Country Club in Bradenton, Florida. I'm a PGA Master Golf Professional and the 2013 North Florida PGA Section Teacher of the Year. We're here today to talk a little bit about a couple of things. We're going to talk about your stance, your posture, and your alignment. Basically, that's what constitutes the setup. So first we're going to start in the stance. Okay? The thing we want to understand is we basically have three different types of clubs in your bag. You have short clubs, mid clubs, and long clubs. And the stance is not going to all be the same for all of them. Okay, so the length of the club is going to dictate the width that you have, but the difference between a driver and a wedge is going to be very similar. So let me explain. If I take a pitching wedge, as I set up and I get my stance width, I want the stance fairly narrow. So if I take you back to a starting point, which everybody's heard, which is about shoulder width apart, to find shoulder width apart, if you just spread your feet, the insides of your feet are the width of your stance. So if I spread my feet, point my fingers straight down, I can basically ascertain that this is about shoulder width apart. So for short irons, your 8-iron, 9-iron wedge, and sand wedges, we're going to make that stance a little bit more narrow. Okay, so I have a pitching wedge in my hand, so I make it a little bit more narrow. Basically what that does is I bring my feet closer together, is it raises my center of gravity a little bit, and it moves it a little bit further forward. So for my wedges and my short irons, that's going to help me hit down a little bit without me even trying. So again, with your shorter clubs, we're going to bring it in a little bit more than shoulder width apart. If we take, let's say, a 6-iron, we're now going to go to the shoulder width apart. So now we make our stance, easy way again, kind of point down right on the insides of your heels there. That's going to get you nice and level. That'll be good for all of your intermediate clubs, all the way up until your 3-wood. So that's going to keep you nice and tall in your shoulders. It's going to have the bottom of your swing right about in the middle of your feet. When we move up to the driver, though, that golf club needs a little bit more support. So even though this width of stance is changing very small, please understand that we go from short irons to the majority of your bag to the driver. So the driver now starts at shoulder width. I'm going to spread that right foot back just a little bit. Now again, what that does is widening my stance. That lowers my center of gravity, and it actually moves me further back away from the ball to the right for a right-handed golfer. So that's going to promote me to hit it basically on the upswing is what we want. So the stance, the width of your stance according to each club is vital. Okay, so we want to pay attention to, I have a driver, that's going to be a little wider than shoulder width. I have the majority of my golf clubs, that's going to be shoulder width, 6-iron, 7-iron, 5-iron, and then if I'm hitting a short wedge, I'm going to narrow it up. Okay, now let's get into ball position. Ball position for each club is kind of like the stance. It's not going to vary a lot, but it does need to vary. So if I take, let's say I start with the pitching wedge like I did with the stance. If we start from a center line, all the golf balls are going to be just slightly forward of center. Doesn't matter what you're hitting. But if I set up and I have my narrower stance for a pitching wedge, I'm going to have that, according to the middle of my stance, maybe a little ball width, just about a ball width left of center. That's more than enough. As I start moving up into my 6-iron and the middle irons, I go from the center mark, and that's going to be just a little bit further left. So the stance widens, ball moves up a little bit. Still not up to my left heel yet, but it has progressively moved up. Again, these balls, how they're moving forward, probably are only about the width of a golf ball. So we don't want to take the whole bottle of aspirin instead of 2. It's very small. So by the time we get up to the driver now is going to have the ball located right inside the left heel, as you can see right there. So as I get the wider stance, the center of gravity moves backwards and down. I am set now to hit this a little bit more on the upswing. So the ball position, when it moves, again, it moves very little, just like your stance moves very little. There's options you have as well as far as the feet position when you get set up to a golf club. One thing you can do when you're hitting a wedge, you can have your stance, again, is narrow. You can have your right foot perpendicular to the target line. Pull the left foot back a little bit and it's flared out. The left toe's flared out a little bit. What that happens is that restricts the backswing slightly, but it allows us to get through the ball with our lower body well to hit short clubs very well. Okay, so that's the kind of setup you're going to want as you narrow it in. Get the right foot perpendicular, pull the left foot back just a little bit off of the target line. That's going to help the lower body clear out with those short irons. With the driver, excuse me, let me go back to the original. With the 6-iron or the 7-iron, there you can stand pretty much neutral, okay? So the feet, however that they sit, when you stand, this is what I would suggest, just let them do what they do. And they're going to be nice and square to the target line. They're going to be nice and square to the target line. When you get up to a driver, one of the things you can do to promote a bigger turn on each side of the golf ball, from this angle, we've got the ball forward, a little bit wider stance. You can see I flared out each foot just a little bit. The reason why I do that is, as I have my feet angled slightly each way, it promotes a bigger turn back and a fuller turn coming through. Another thing that we can do and we advise you to do with your driver is you can close your stance ever so slightly. So as you stand up to the ball, we can pull the right foot back away from the target line a little bit. Again, what that helps us do is it helps us get the club back with a nice big full turn. Okay? With all of these golf clubs, something to understand. If I grab this 7-iron, we want, for all of them, we want when we start off, as we work our way into posture, we want the weight right in the balls of our feet. Okay? So as I start to go into posture here in a second, we're going to start with the ground up, but we want the weight right in the balls of our feet. But if I take you from the forward view, something to understand is the way the golf club is built, when you set it down, fight the urge, folks, to get the golf club dead straight at address. You actually want the club face marginally open at address. We're not talking a lot. You can see how I've really twisted that, but just slightly open. The reason is by that sequence of the swing, just before you're hitting it, the golf club should be marginally open. When it gets to the ball a fraction later, it would be square. But if we start the golf club dead square at the ball, when you actually hit the ball, it'll actually be hooded a little bit. So just have the club just slightly open at address. Let's work our way now into posture. As we just said, the posture, we want to start from the ground up. We want to start with the weight in the balls of our feet, and we'll work our way up to the knees. Okay? So as we set up, I'm going to use the 7-iron for an example. We get set. We start with the weight in the balls of our feet. We're going to flex our knees slightly. Fight the urge to bend your knees. There isn't going to be any bending here. Okay? We're going to have, the knees are going to be kicked in slightly. Nobody really stands too much like this. Don't make anything abnormal, but as you flex, your knees will tilt in slightly. That's normal. We get back to this angle. We're going to push our hips backwards. So right now we have just a little bit of bounce, a little flex. Weight in the balls of the feet. The hips go backwards. So the hips are pushed backwards. That's going to create a tilt. Because what we're looking for here, folks, is we're looking so that we can get in a position so that your arms are hanging very softly straight down from your shoulders. And that's very pivotal. Because if the arms are full of tension, we're going to have a big trouble going into the next segment, which is going to be the shape of the golf swing. So we want to make sure that our arms are tension-free and that they're hanging softly from the shoulders. So again, we set up from the feet, right in the balls. Next up, the knees slightly flexed. Hips go back. They go back as far as I can go until my arms are hanging tension-free and softly. And that's going to be the posture. You notice the back is relatively straight. And that's what we want. We don't want any slouching. From the front view, as I take that setup position, balls of the feet, slight flex, then from the hips, you're going to notice that I'm forming a triangle right here. There's a triangle that goes from each shoulder blade, down each arm, then the stick. So what we really want is, we want the club basically pointing right at your fly. But as we go through this into the next segment, we're going to be talking about this triangle that I'm forming from my arms. So in the setup position, got the triangle in front of us. From this side, we've got the triangle in front of us here. My shoulders should feel as though they're pulled back ever so slightly. Okay, so I don't want to get into a rounded position. We don't need to extreme it, but we want to have the shoulders feeling like they're pulled back. That's going to keep you nice and tall. And to understand, when we look at this view in the last part of the stance and the posture, as we get that triangle in front of us, you're going to notice that my right shoulder, I'm a right-handed golfer, is just a little bit lower than my left. That's correct. So your shoulders will sit slightly at an angle. Now you may be asking, well, how much should I be tilting? Basically what's happening is, according to the ball position and the width of your stance, it's really just the same amount, if I put my hands together, that I lower my right hand on the grip. So if I just do this and lower my right hand to grip it, my right shoulder went down. That's the proper amount of tilt. So when we're getting there, just when people say, why should I be tilting my shoulders? Well, it's sort of self-explanatory in that your right hand is lower than your left hand on the grip, so now we have to have a slight tilt. As you go into the driver, that tilt will appear to be a little bit bigger. So if I put the ball a little further forward, get my nice widened stance, feet flared out, hips back, because the golf club is so far forward and I reached over there, you notice that tilt is just a little bit larger. So don't exaggerate it, but please understand that as a righty, your right shoulder should be lower than your left. Don't ever try to make them parallel, okay? As we move into now the last part of the posture, please keep in mind that it is extremely important when you set up to a golf ball to have your forearms in line. And I'm going to talk about that here more in a second in alignment. But if we look at this view where we are right now, as we set up and we get our hips back, shoulders back a little bit, and we're letting the arms hang freely, we'd like to get the forearms so that they are parallel to the target line. It's very easy to see people doing this and this, but if you remember from this view, just letting your shoulders tilt a little bit, that's going to help get your forearms in line. So that's really, really pivotal when we're talking about alignment as we go into alignment right now. Keep in mind for alignment that you have two different lines in golf. You have the club that's out here on the right-hand side. That's going at my target. That's called the target line. I have a club that is on a parallel left side of it, which is right here, which is my body line. They are not the same. They are parallel. They do not cross. So as I go through my alignment, what I want to keep in mind is, as I set up to a golf ball, take my setup, get my posture, my golf club head and the ball are on the target line out to my flagstick. My body lines, if I drew a line straight down, would actually go left of that flagstick. Okay, that is correct. So as I glance out towards the target, my flag actually looks a little bit to the right of me. That is correct because it actually is a little bit to the right of me. That's just a little tip for alignment, that if you ever get set up and you think you're correct, and you look out there and your target looks like it's right over your left shoulder, or God forbid it looks like it's behind you, you are out of alignment. So we need to get the feet, knees, the hips, the forearms directly across, the shoulders, and just as important, the eyes. We want our eyes to be on a parallel line to our target line. Extremely important, forearms and eyes and shoulders. If I tilt my head, let's say to the right towards the camera, I now have my eyes going this way. That is going to change the whole shape of my swing. A lot of people don't pay attention to that part. Keep in mind, we want our eyes level. You see where I am, I'm looking straight down. My eyes are parallel to my target line. We don't want them here, that'll create a type of motion. We don't want them here, that'll create a type of motion. Probably something you hadn't been aware of, but keep check of in your alignment, keep check of your eyes too, make sure they're parallel to the line. As we go into the next segment, I just want to wish you a good day. I hope that helped you out, and we'll see you in the next segment. Thank you very much.